as we who are left grow old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Salute.
In Flanders fields the poppies grow, beneath the crosses row on row, that mark our place, while in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, and saw the sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies blow in Flanders fields. Doug was a Navy man. He was 25 or 20-year man. He's the same age as me, roughly. We grew up and went to school together. And he joined the Navy about a year after I joined the Army. And then when he got out of the Navy, he came back here and retired here. Well, he worked for the mill for a while. And he retired here, but he was always active in the Legion from the day he got back. The funny little story about Doug and I, we came home on leave during the Korean War, and they wouldn't let us in the Legion. Because in those days, to get in the Legion, you had to be a veteran. But and then Doug served on numerous positions in the Legion. He was in the color guard for years. He was a vice president with me and a vice president before me. He had a special place at the BS table at the head of it. And any day from 4 o'clock to 5, you could find Doug in the Legion having what he called was a wet. A wet in the service is a beer. In the service there are two canteens. There's dry canteen where you can get something soft like a Pepsi, or there's a wet canteen where you can get the real stuff. So Doug always had to go for his wet every day, and he became quite a fixture around the Legion for I don't know how many years that would be. He probably came back here in about 1970, I guess, and I'm sure, and I think he was every day in the Legion after that.
Doug was a good comrade. Many stories around the table, lots of good laughs, lots of beer drink. Surely missed.
Oh, and we should mention that Doug was responsible for the New Year's levy. Every year on New Year's Day, he brought the branch and us together, and he served us a shot of Navy rum, and sometimes more than one shot. And he did it right up until the last year of his life.
I'd like to have something to say if I could too. Doug was very instrumental into getting the RCMP involved with the Legion here in the pod, Branch 19. I met him very, I guess, early on when I first got here, and he drugged me across to the Legion. You got to be a member, and I can hear in your voice, you got a strong voice. We want you to be the Sergeant at Arms. And he threw me into the executive really quick, but he also brought to me the great times that we had on Levy Day, and the toasts and the Buster's rums to the Queen, and he had a special toast about him that to this day I don't think I'll ever forget, and I'll probably carry it with me for the rest of my life. It was kind of it was an old Navy sailor's toast, and he would raise his glass and he would go to our miss him dearly. Yeah, if you guys want to drive around, and then no, I'm gonna walk with these guys. We'll show you where it's at. Okay. I'm Corporal Stark with the RCMP here in the PAW. I've been posted here since 2015, and part of our duties was to ensure that our past and fallen members of the RCMP's grave sites are well kept and preserved and in good standing fashion and order. And coming here, I was very quickly introduced to the PAW Legion, Branch 19, and coming through and just doing Remembrance Day services, which I did ever since I was a little kid. And I've never actually came across one of our members' grave sites that had the RCMP or Royal North West Mounted Police headstones on it. And coming here into the PAW, very quickly I came to find Sergeant Wesley Geimer, his grave, which had, or does have, an RCMP headstone on it. And through the time that I've been here, I've come to find that not only did we have a RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police headstone here and grave, we also have Royal Northwest Mounted Police member that's since passed away many years back, and that's George Lindsay, and his grave is here as well, although not marked with a headstone for the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the Royal Northwest Mounted Police. He is a regular grave headstone. But we still, on every Remembrance Day, we come to check to make sure that the graves are preserved and in good order, and we pay our respects every single Remembrance Day to our fallen RCMP, Royal Northwest Mounted Police, grave sites, and members that served with us.
Okay. My name is Murray Harvey. I grew up in the PAW, born and raised in the PAW, 1931, on a little house on 7th Street. I was one of the generation that grew up during the Second World War. And we didn't know it at the time, but us young fellas were being conditioned for war. And we watched all the older boys going to war in the Second World War, and I can remember the telegraph girl coming around crying because she was taking telegrams to the homes of the boys that had been killed overseas. So war was quite a bit of my childhood. And then all of a sudden, when we were all expecting to go, the war was over. And so there was a Reserve Army unit here at the time, Fort Garry Horse. And you had to be 16 to get in, and but I lied my age and got in at 14. And I served with the unit for 3 years. At 16, I was a gun sergeant, and then in 1949, I joined the active force and served with the Royal Canadian Artillery for 3 years, from 1949 to 1952. In the summer of 1950, we were told that we were going to Korea. That was a war that was going to start in Korea, and that we would be going. And us young 17-year-olds didn't even know where Korea was, let alone going over there. But as it turned out, because the standing army at the time was so small, that the politicians decided they couldn't send us to Korea, because if the Third World War broke out, all of our land forces would be overseas. So I didn't get to go. I got the job of training the ones that went to go, and that were to go. We all volunteered, but they just laughed at us and said, "You're staying here." A couple of our boys did put on civilian clothes one time and went to Calgary and re-enlisted in the Pats. And after they spent 2 weeks in the Pats, they confessed who they were, and they were sent back to our regiment for punishment. But the commanding officer of the 2nd Battalion, Princess Pats, Big Jim Stone, said after they finished their punishment, send them back so they're good soldiers. And then they paraded us all out and said, don't any of you guys tie that, because if you do it, you're not going to Korea, you're going to Blueberry Hill, which was a military jail. So I spent the rest of my service in Canada. I was an artillery signaller, and I wound up training recruits as they came through the camp for Korea. I got out in 1952, and in 1956, I joined up again. One of the regrets in my life, which might sound funny to a civilian, there were a lot of boys from the PAW that served in Korea. We did an unofficial survey in about 1960, and as near as we could tell, there were upwards of 90 young men from the PAW and Cormorant and around in the OCN. We had 2 casualties, Baptiste Ross from OCN and a young man named McLeod from the PAW, who was killed in a grenade training accident in Calgary. Yeah, I want to say a little bit about the Veterans Book of our branch here. Years ago, and as we brought the kids through the branch to see the museum, and we started getting questions about the people from the PAW that served in the wars. And I also was getting questions from some of the families. And I would notice when a veteran died that they didn't have the story right. They didn't know what the medals were and where they'd went. So I decided to create this book. And what I did is I asked people whose families of veterans if they would bring me a picture and a little bit of a story about the service, and we would put together a book. And this book is the result. And each day it's a ceremony in our rite in our branch that we turn a page each day. So each day there's a different page of a veteran. Now it just so happens that as I'm telling this story, the page here is Jack Abram. Jack Abram was one of 4 of us that joined the Army together. And he was one of my buddies, and of course he's passed on since. But we have a good record now of Second World War and First World War and Korea veterans, peacekeeping veterans. They weren't all branch members, but most of them were branch members. And people brought the stories into them, and I put them up on a computer. And then Crystal Gordonnaire, who used to work here, was good enough to set them up for us. And we'd make 1 page for each person, and their story and what war they were in. This one is Second World War, and Jack Abram is the Korean War and the Cold War. And so by keeping a record, we have a history of most of the veterans. I haven't got them all by any means, and I still get the occasional request for a page, but what I'm finding now is that somebody will send me a picture without a story, or they'll send me a story without a picture, and it's very hard to get back into the families. So if anybody is watching this from the PAW and area, OCN, Cormorant, and they would like their veterans story in the branch book, please give me a call. I'm in the phone book, Murray Harvey, and if you can get me a picture and basically their story history, I'd be glad to put their picture in a book, in our book. This picture here is the Reserve Army unit. I don't know if you can get it or not. That's myself pinning the Legion of Honor medal on Philip Vashnik, who was one of the Canadians that stormed ashore on D-Day in France, and he was presented the medal by the government of France. He and another man from the PAW, Bob Garand, who was a sailor. Philip was in the Regina Rifles. He was wounded when he hit the beach, and he lay in the beach all day, and then finally he was brought back to England to the hospital. Bob Garand was the commander of a landing craft, and it got hit, and it was stuck on the beach all day, and he finally got it pumped out and back to England. And he got a mention in dispatches for that. These two men were awarded the Legion of Honor by the French government, which is equivalent to a knighthood. So I guess they would be called Sir Philip Bashnik and Sir Bob Garand. The picture up here on the right, if you can see it, that's the reserve regiment was the Paw, Flin Flon, and Dauphin, and there are 33 young men from the Paw in that picture. And I don't know if you can see me or not. That's me there. And that picture was taken in 1948 in Work Point Barracks in Victoria. Now, if we can go over here just a little bit. These two pictures, this picture here and this picture over here, which we'll go to in a minute, were in a Legion magazine. And I looked at this one very carefully because the second last man in that patrol, this is in Korea, is Jim Abram from the PAW. And they're on a patrol there. Jim and the other two men were in the Battle of Kapyong in Korea, where the 2nd Battalion Princess Pats won the presidential citation for holding the line at Kapyong. There was 600 Canadians held the line against, I think they said roughly 3,000 Chinese. And this picture over here, these two men here are on a mortar are Henry Hayward from the PAW. He's the guy bending over like this. And the guy over here looking that way is Johnny Joyle. Both these men from the PAW, both members of the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's, and both of them fought at Kapyong. And that's kind of the thing I wanted to show you here.
Is there anything else you want to show?
Yeah, maybe we could just walk over here for a minute. There's an interesting thing over here. This is the front page of the town paper on June the 6th, 1944, the day of the Normandy invasion. And I was a schoolboy then, and we used to sell papers on the corner by Cambrian Hotel every day when the paper came out every day. And that day I remember they told us that in the morning. We all ran uptown to try and sell papers because we knew it was going to be a big day. About 15 years ago, I got a call from a person who was renovating a house. And he said, I found this paper. Maybe you'd be interested in it. And it was the paper, it was the Northern Mail for the D-Day paper. And I took the front of it and I had it framed, and that's how it got here to the Legion. And it was actually in a wall in a house somewhere. So I thought you might be interested in that.
That is very interesting.
I think I'm one of the last of the Mohicans right now. When we came home, at the time we came home, there was nine of us from the PAW came home on the train together in 1952, and I'm the last one. So that's all I can say about that, unless you have some questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Blake. I'm a long-time Legion member. I have just close to 50 years of service with the Legion branch here in the PAW. And I came by my service into the Legion, I wanted to put something back into the Legion. And I enjoy my service with the Legion branch. When I started out, I decided when I was still going to school that I got tired of going to school, so I decided to go into Winnipeg and join the forces. When they found out that I was considerably underage, they decided that I should go back and try and get some education, which I did. And when I came to the PAW in 1973, or before, I joined the Royal Canadian Legion here in the PAW, and enjoyed my service with the Legion branch here in the PAW. And we do considerable work every year. We prepare the cenotaphs for our service on June 6th in town and at the cenotaph south of town. And always my thoughts is not what the Legion can do for me, it's what I can do for the Legion. And we do considerable, there's a group of us that do considerable work with the Legion. When I was very young, I decided I didn't need to go to school. So I decided to go, and some of us decided to go to Winnipeg and see if they would accept us in the military. Well, when I had to have a birth certificate, and I was not quite 15 years old, they shipped me back to school. So my good friend and neighbor, Mr. Robert Grand, we lived beside each other, we golfed together, and we come to the Legion branch together. And Mr. Grand's landing craft was one of the first ones on Juno Beach on June 6, 44. And someone asked him, how was it there? Because the shell went right through their landing craft. And Mr. Grand's answer was, he said, it was a terrible racket. That's all the stories I have. These pictures that are on the wall here are all pictures of young gentlemen from the PAW who served with honor in World War II. And these are their pictures and stories behind them. As we go further down here, there's a picture, lest we forget. We drew war to us from our homeland in the sunny springtime of our youth. Those who did not come back alive remain in perpetual springtime, forever young, and a part of them is always with us. This, sir, is a picture of a Veteran's Bill of Rights. And this poem, A Soldier Died Today, was donated by Mr. Mike Connors, who's sitting right down there. It's a beautiful poem, just a common soldier. And Murray showed you this one. This is the Vashnik family. Most of these gentlemen referred to from Picton, Manitoba. These are some more young gentlemen from the PAW. Mr. Hebert, Mr. Hartbees, and Scott Lakestein. These are gentlemen that served in Afghanistan. Gentlemen. Owen Thorne, Jerry Yankee, Scott Newey, Nolan Svetlikov. They didn't want to let us sell poppies in the post office, but we got it anyway. Here's a picture of Jim Atkins, Jim Blake, Bob Grand, John Feinstone, and Doug Goldstrand, presenting Mr. Robert Grand a certificate of appreciation for Bob's contribution to the Poppy Fund, December 2015. Mr. Grand was 103 years old.
Wow.
And this is Mr. Goldstrand's galley. It's for P.O.I. Douglas M. Goldstrand, engineer, HMCS Restigouche. This is Mr. Doug Goldstrand's office. And that's about it. Mr. Stark and Mr. Mike Connors and Mr. Doug Goldstrand, who is no longer with us, we always enjoyed doing the work, and every year we would make preparations for June 6th and November 11th. And that was one of the things that I so thoroughly enjoy, is working with these gentlemen. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Connors. I live here in Nepal. I'm 52 years old. I'm a veteran. I served my first serving as I was 12 years old. I joined the Sea Cadets. Went all the way up to 19 until I got serviced out. From there, I joined the Royal Newfoundland Regiment. Served with the Royal Newfoundland Regiment for 2 years. My third year, I ended up getting tasked out to go to on a tour, the UN tour. I was with the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia, Canadian Light Infantry. I got accepted. I got shipped to Winnipeg. Boy, that was cold. And when I got to Winnipeg, I did 6 months of training, everywhere from training in Winnipeg we went down to Fort Ord, California, training down there, down in 29 Palms training, with desert training down there. When our 6-month trainings were up, we got tasked to go to Croatia. That was the summer, I do believe, of '93. When I got over there, I spent 6 months in Europe or Croatia. I ended up being tasked in Charlie Company. Charlie Company was one of the companies that seen action in Medak Pocket in Croatia, in the southern part of Croatia. From there, once my tour was up in September, I came back and I went back home to Newfoundland, where I'm originally from. From there, they got a hold of me and asked me would I like to join the Princess Canadian Light Infantry. That's where they put me in as direct entry. And then when I joined the Patricias, they sent me to the 1st Battalion in Calgary. And that's where I served 3 years in Calgary, wonderful years, and where I had met my wife and my family and stuff like that. And I decided that, Army, military life was pretty much ended for me. I got out, and then I had one child. Right now, he's actually my son Daniel. He's actually in the Royal Dragoons. He's actually in the military too himself. So there's quite a long history of military service. And well, where it led me to moving here to Nepal, where I've been here now 20 years with my family and that, and joined the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 19 here. Joining the military is a life that a lot of people can do. Is a choice. Serving your country, serving other people is not an easy task to do, but very rewarding. As a young young lad or a young person myself, I got to see the world. I got to travel all over the United States, all over Europe. That's what I loved about it. And it taught me a lot of lessons in life too. How to be a man, one thing, and having integrity, a person who you are. It teaches you a lot of stuff, respect, a lot of good stuff that you will need the rest when you lead, when you grow older and lead in life and stuff like that. It teaches you a lot of good lessons. But again, it is a life. It is a choice of lifestyle. It's not for everybody, and there's other ways to serve your country other than in the military. Yeah, being a peacekeeper, it had its bad times, but it also has a lot of good times. When you move into a small community or town, you got kids. Like we had one kid there in one of our communities, and we were there for about after a month. You'll see more kids coming around. We had a bunch of kids that were living in one house. There was 8 of them, and every day they show up around. Well, they come and visit us and stuff like that. And each kid, there was only one pair of shoes, and each kid every day had to share those shoes. So of course, we went into the main town, got everyone 2 pairs of shoes each. That's the stuff that means a lot when you're doing this. The expression on their faces, I'll never forget. Most of the other stuff is just, you serve with your buddies, you're there all the time. Sometimes wasn't very good living together. You living arm in arm away from each other. So, other times there were great times. Had lots of fun with them. For the most part, a lot of good stories. Too many to tell.
You mentioned your son Daniel was in the Army now. So what motivated him to be in the Army?
I guess the history of my family. My grandfather served in the First and Second World War. He was actually on minesweepers on the boats. Growing up, I figured I'd end up in the Navy. Somehow I ended up in the Army. Don't know how that happened, but so the history behind it, with my grandfather, me serving, it was something he wanted to do. I truthfully tried to avoid him going into the military and that, but he said he had to, so something he had to do. He still is serving as we speak, and he really loves it.
My name is Colin Stark, and I am a corporal with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police posted here in the Paw. I've got 20 years of service with the RCMP and posted in between 2 provinces of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. I was born and raised in Manitoba, a small place called Whitemouth, farming community, and I did a lot of community services growing up. I was part of a fire department, volunteer fire department in Whitemouth. I was a captain there. I was part of the ambulance service out there. And I always knew that I wanted to do one of 2 things. I either wanted to get into the RCMP or I wanted to get into the military. And I should say 3 things, I guess. It was that or the fire department. And I had to make a choice, and I chose the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And I joined in 2001. My childhood growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and every Remembrance Day, as far back as I can remember, we went to just about every service that we could throughout the years. And it was very important that my grandparents that they taught me that we have to remember those that fought for our country to give us the things that we have today, that we enjoy, the freedoms that we have. And to me, that was really instilled in my life growing up. I knew that I wanted to give back in a way to my community and to my country, and joining the RCMP was one of those ways. And I'm very proud of the service that I have. That service, the way that I was brought up was, I guess, instilled in my children, and they are to giving back to their communities. My son is a paramedic and my daughter is studying for her nurse's degree, and very, very proud of them. They have that connection with their community as well, which goes through our family. As for military experience, I don't personally have any military experience, but my family does. And my great-great-grandfather was a general in the French Army. And I have a lot of family members, extended cousins, extended uncles that have joined over the years that fought in World War II and several other campaigns. And I do have quite a few family members, again extended, that are serving in the RCMP. Joining the Legion, I had Doug Goldstrand, was one of my comrades here, that reached out to me and said, you know, when I first got to the PAW, this is the place for you. With your service and your history, we've got something that we can give to you, and you've got something that we can give to us. And I was very intrigued with that, because growing up and doing the Remembrance Day services, I always saw these people wearing the blue jackets and the gray pants and their berets, and I never really understood what it was that it meant. And coming to the Legion really instilled in that, in my mind, what it is that these people stand for and what they did to bring themselves to where they are today. And to just be in their company is actually humbling to me, because they really are who I consider my heroes. And being able to sit in Legion and hear their stories from the wars gone by, their service that they had, was something that was extremely proud for me to be a part of, to listen, to hear their stories, and to be able to take those stories and tell them to other people and bring other people the stories that those that aren't here with us anymore had, that instilled into me. My service within the Legion, I started out as a sergeant at arms and joining the executive, where I moved up to a second vice president. And I got to see the workings of the Legion and the things that they do to bring opportunity to our veterans that have come back from the wars, from the campaigns that they fought in. And those opportunities are huge, because I think a lot of people don't realize the type of challenges that they have when they come back from these campaigns and these wars. And just being a part of the Legion helps them deal with that, helps them to sit down with people of understanding where they may have been, what they may have seen, and the things that they have done.